So what I'll talk about today, I'll discuss who we are. So QuickSmart's part of CIMA at the University of New England. So I'll just give a little bit of detail about that. I'll talk about why QuickSmart is needed. And you might already have very specific ideas about why you think QuickSmart is needed at your school. I'll also talk about what QuickSmart is. So what is the program, what it involves. I'll talk about why it works, and then what you need to do at your school level. So I'll talk about what we provide as part of the program, and then what you guys will need to do. So we're part of CIMA, as I mentioned, at the University of New England. Now, CIMA stands for the National Research Centre in Science, ICT, Mathematics Education in rural and regional Australia. So CIMA's actually been going for 20 years this year. And while it has rural and regional in the title, its focus has broadened to obviously encompass all issues of national concern with respect to education. So the QuickSmart program has actually been going for more than 2 decades. And the co-creators, so you've got Professor John Pegg from the numeracy side and Professor Lorraine Graham from the literacy side. And Professor John Pegg is still the current director of CIMA. So it's been going for more than 20 years, which is a substantial amount of time. And we've got, I guess, lots of students that we've helped during that time. And it's over 80,000 that we know of that have gone through the QuickSmart program. And there's hundreds and hundreds of schools every year that are using the QuickSmart programs to support their students' learning. So if you do QuickSmart, you do have access to us. That is, we support you through the process and you're not alone. I don't want anyone to feel like they're alone when they're conducting the QuickSmart program. So if you've got questions about the program and actually, this is happening for one particular student, what should I do? Those sort of questions. So there's someone to help you throughout running that QuickSmart program at your school. So why is the program needed? So I guess the philosophy at QuickSmart is that intelligence is learnable and incremental. And it's amazing how many people will say they're not good at maths. Maths isn't my forte. Oh, my parents couldn't do maths. I've never been good at maths. And they're very happy to volunteer this information pretty much to anyone. And it doesn't have to be the case. Many more people or students than is currently the situation can become capable and active learners, particularly to do with mathematics. And of course, all students deserve the right to meet their expectations for their particular year of schooling. If we look at some NAPLAN data, it's similar to the previous year, so 2023's data, that it's found 1 in 3 students in Australia do not meet the expectations for their particular year of schooling. And this is quite disheartening data. And as I said, the same as last year, but can't be compared to previous years because the NAPLAN changed their categorization last year. It's quite disheartening to think of all the time and effort you guys are spending at a school level, 1 in 3 students isn't meeting those basic capabilities for their year level. And there's certainly a geographical disadvantage as well. So the further you go from metropolitan regions, the less students are meeting those expectations. So by the time you get out to very remote schools, it's 1/3 of students compared to a metropolitan region that meet those expectations. So there's certainly a great need out there in our schools for helping students with their numeracy. Because what starts as a small crack, as they've written in this particular report, becomes a chasm. Basically, if students fall behind, they're less able to participate in their classroom lessons and they can fall further and further behind over time because they're just not at the point where they can participate. And that's regardless of their level of advantage, that they struggle to catch up on their own. And I like to say the QuickSmart program enables students to catch up so that they can keep up moving forward. But the disadvantage does affect how much they do fall behind. So if you look at this particular report from 2023, and their disadvantage measure was the parents' level of schooling. So their disadvantage group was students whose parents did not finish high school, and the advantage group was students who had parents who had bachelor degrees or above. They found what was a gap of 1 year and 7 months in year 3. By the time the students got to year 9, it was a gap of 4 years. And that's quite alarming to think that year 9 students, gap of 4 years, they're still operating in a primary school level. So they're falling further and further behind other students. And of course, that's what we don't want to happen for our students. So what is QuickSmart then, and why does it work for students? So QuickSmart is based on ideas of cognitive science and how the brain learns. So it's an intervention program for middle school students. So years 4 to 9 who are underperforming in either literacy, as I said, we have a companion literacy program, or numeracy, which is the one I'm talking about today. So we do recommend not to use it for years 3 and below, because there are developmental things that have to happen for students and based on the curriculum as to when they need to be able to use all 4 of the operations, for example. It isn't actually capped at year 9. We have quite successful programs in QuickSmart for adult learners, but it does get more tricky at a high school in year 10 and senior to pull students out for intervention programs. They're less likely to be willing to do that. And, there's all sorts of different things happening, apprenticeships and other things in those senior years. And of course, the earlier you can assist a student, then they won't be falling further and further behind through those middle years. So year 4 to year 9. So we're offering students a second chance and potentially a last chance to become active and confident learners in the classroom. And one of the things the schools talk about when we come back in the middle of the year, when they've started their programs, is the change they see in students in their other classrooms. So not just in the QuickSmart lessons, but in their classrooms. The teachers see the change in students. They're more confident, they're more willing to take risks, put up their hand and answer a question, for example. So they're becoming much more engaged in their lessons generally. So we're improving the speed, accuracy, and understanding of basic mathematics. So those 3 elements are very important. The understanding is extremely important for students to be able to extend and use and apply their number facts. So we call it QuickSmart. So it's got both those elements in it, of the speed and accuracy as well as the understanding. Because students won't just need to know their basic number facts up to 12, for example. They might need to use what they know about, 6 plus 4 in terms of decimals. So 0.6 plus 0.4, or 4,000 plus 6,000, for example. So they need to develop that understanding so they can extend and use those number facts in a wide variety of contexts. And that's included in the program as well. So we're facilitating students' active engagement and participation in their wider classrooms and providing that solid foundation for them to be able to participate and for that further learning in their classrooms that they're trying to do based on the syllabus. It enables students to perform at levels comparable with their average achieving peers in standardized tests. So even though we're not teaching specific syllabus items necessarily in QuickSmart, it enables students to perform and show great improvements in things like NAPLAN or PAT-M or the other variety of standardized tests that we have throughout Australia. And it provides gains which are maintained and even extended years into the future. So what we're trying to do really is give students skills they need for life, because having those fundamental functional numeracy skills opens up opportunities for learning throughout the education as well as for employment and just participation in basic activities that they need to do. So with respect to the response to intervention framework, the QuickSmart program falls within a tier 2 because you are working with a pair of students, so a small group at a time, using a validated intervention program. But it has most of the elements of the tier 3 program as well. That is, it is an individualized program. So the 2 students are not on the same learning journey. So it is individualized for each student within the program. And it's got frequent data collection and analysis of that throughout. You don't have to do a separate assessment aside from what's already embedded within the lessons, and that gives you all that fantastic formative information to inform where the students are going through the program and their progression through the program. So I mentioned we're developing those 3 aspects: their speed, their accuracy, and their understanding as part of the program. We've got that feedback assessment loop built in, so students getting immediate feedback. You can work on what that particular student needs. So they're getting individually targeted, deliberate practice on their specific area of need. So the QuickSmart program, they can't fail it or can't be left behind as they might feel they are in a classroom environment. It goes at exactly the pace that student needs based on what they're doing. So we're developing neural pathways for automaticity with those basic number facts. And I'll talk a bit further about what automaticity is in a moment. But we're trying to develop really strong neural pathways for them. So these are skills students will have for the rest of their lives. Because we're ultimately trying to free up the working memory. So the working memory is the bottleneck of our thinking and learning, if you like. It's where our thinking happens, but it is constrained with respect to capacity and duration. So we don't want students using up those very valuable working memory spots for things that should be quick and easy for them. Because if they're still struggling to work out 7 plus 5, they're using up the working memory slots and they're not going to be learning how to add fractions or do algebra, whatever they're using that particular number fact for. So as I mentioned, it's all about automaticity. So automaticity is the ability to complete an everyday task, so it doesn't just apply to mathematics, effortlessly without conscious thought or a step-by-step process. And we all develop automaticity in lots of our things of our lives. For example, most of you, I'm sure, can drive a car. And if a dog ran out in the road in front of your car, you wouldn't be thinking, oh, which pedal do I have to hit for the brake? You have automaticity with that, so you can use your working memory to be thinking, oh, do I need to swerve or do I need to brake? How do I miss this dog? So you can use that higher order thinking. And that's exactly what we want for our students with the QuickSmart program. If they've got automaticity with those basic number facts, they can then be thinking about what's important and what they're trying to learn, for example, in their classrooms. I will mention it is not just rote learning. So as I said, understanding is very much part of it. And rote learning, the best example I can give of rote learning is it's how we learn the alphabet. But if you were asked what's 5 letters in front of M, you'd probably have to start from the beginning and then work your way back again. And that's not what we want with students and mathematics. They need to be able to use and apply and extend their number facts and manipulate numbers in a wide range of context. So it isn't just rote learning. A report last year, for example, from the Centre for Independent Studies, emphasised the importance of automaticity in maths education. They said that number facts should be learnt to the point of automaticity to increase confidence, understanding, and achievement. And these were the 3 areas they particularly saw the benefits for students. They said the research on memory and learning was quite clear. The limitations on the working memory affect learning when acquiring new academic knowledge. So having that automaticity with those basic number facts frees up the working memory and supports students to manipulate new information as they build up more complex schemas. In mathematics, and schemas is how we store information in our long-term memory. So it's quite clear that freeing up that working memory space and having automaticity with those basic number facts enables us to learn more complex things in mathematics. So does the program work? And the short answer is yes, absolutely. So as I said, it's been going more than 20 years and we have many reports. I think we've got more than a decade worth of our annual reports up on our website, free, publicly available. So you can see that it does indeed work and see the evidence that it does. Now, I won't go into the statistics here a lot, but at the top, you can see there's a row that says all QuickSmart students, and it has an effect size of 0.67. So effect size is something that John Hattie has done a lot of research in, and a typical student in a typical classroom will have an effect size between 0.2 to 0.4. And quite often, around 0.3 will therefore be a typical classroom growth within a year for a student. So if a student, for example, here had 0.67, they would have, 2 to 3 years growth within that particular year. And that's certainly what you can expect with respect to your students on the QuickSmart program. You can expect to see 2 to 3 years growth just in that 1 year on the program. So enabling students to catch up so they can potentially be keeping up in the future to their classmates. And thinking about it in terms of the stay-nines in the PAT-M. And a PAT-M, remember, is actually testing syllabus items. So it's not just testing what's being taught and practice within the QuickSmart program, but the students transfer their learning to a whole range of areas once they have those fundamental skills. It enables them to do the rest of the mathematics that they're expected to do. So you can see here the pre-test, that is at the beginning of the program, students were quite skewed. So this should look like a normal curve, a bell curve for a normal distribution. You can see it's quite skewed to the left because these are obviously lower achieving students that were put on the QuickSmart program. And then after the QuickSmart program, significant shift towards the right, looking much more like a normal distribution at this point. So really can assist students and be quite transformational for some students to really change their trajectory of their futures. So what does the QuickSmart program involve? So basically the QuickSmart program involves doing 3 lessons a week, 30-minute lessons for ideally about 30 weeks over a year. So you're working with a pair of students to one instructor for that 30-minute lesson 3 times a week, as I mentioned. The lessons have very consistent structure. So the student's not using that working memory to think about what's coming up next. It's got a regular and predictable learning sequence and has very high on-task students' time because they're not being asked to concentrate or focus on one thing for that whole 30 minutes. We've got short, sharp activities that are developing their skills. We're encouraging students to use thinking to access their prior knowledge, understanding, and use effective strategies for number facts that they don't yet know. So as I mentioned, we're getting that fantastic formative information inbuilt within the program every single lesson to assist with that ongoing design of the students' program. So their progression through it will depend on how they're doing. It's got that consistent monitoring throughout about their accuracy, understanding, and their retrieval times. And it's a highly motivational learning environment. And it may seem crazy if you haven't run the QuickSmart program that students could want to come to learn about mathematics. But honestly, the majority of students enjoy coming to mathematics, the QuickSmart numeracy lessons and learning about mathematics, which is quite amazing, given a lot of those students are probably very reluctant and I don't want to say hate mathematics, but maybe very resistant to mathematics. But it's amazing when you see students that actually realize they can learn mathematics. They get the self-efficacy and the confidence around mathematics, which they can then take into a range of situations. So in the program, it includes the number facts for all the operations, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, for the numbers 0 to 12, and problem solving. So that's all included within the program. It's got extensive resource materials with a variety of different modes. So we've got pencil and paper activities, we've got computer activities, we've got verbal responses like flashcards, for example. So there's a range of different activities within each lesson. We provide the resources for these and including games. The QBSA, so the QuickSmart Basic Skills Assessor, is that computer assessment component that is embedded within each lesson, which is part of the program that we provide. And you do an initial then a final post-test, so before starting the program and after finishing the program for each student, so you can see the students' progress. So you've got that evidence and the students have that evidence. In fact, they see their progress throughout the program and they get to experience genuine success throughout the whole program as they see their progress, which is extremely important for them as they start to take ownership over their own learning and become internally motivated. So what's actually in a QuickSmart 30-minute lesson? So it starts off narrower, so the focus is broadening as you move through the lesson and the cognitive load is building. So at the beginning, you've got some explicit teaching time. The instructor is discussing specific number facts with students based on their area of need. So each lesson is based on a particular focused number fact set. And the student's progression will depend on how they do within that number fact set. So the number of lessons you spend on a particular number fact set will be completely dictated by how the student is doing with that. So it won't move on before the student is actually ready to move on. So the first component, as I mentioned, you've got that explicit teaching time and working with students on their specific areas of need to do with that focus number fact set. Then got some flashcards for that particular focus number fact set. We've got some speed sheets, so a pencil and paper activity, which are extended number facts to do with that focus number fact set. Then you have one student doing an independent worksheet related to what they're doing, and one student doing their computer assessment component with the instructor. And then you swap those two students so that they get to each do both components. And then for the sixth component in a lesson, you all come back together and play a maths game. So the maths game, obviously getting that deliberate practice for students with those maths facts, also developing rapport. And a lot of people talk about how supportive QuickSmart students are of their QuickSmart buddy, for example. So it's developing that rapport with you as the instructor and those two students with you and with each other, as well as enabling sort of a fun atmosphere to have lots of informal maths discussions while you're getting that practice as well. So that's what a individual 30-minute lesson involves each time. So what do we provide for the QuickSmart program? We provide all the training you need to be able to do it. So this involves 3 two-day workshops, so 6 days in total over the course of the first year. The first workshop, usually in term 1, enables you to be able to conduct your lessons. So it gets you up to speed so that you can start implementing the program and conduct the lessons at your school. The next workshop, we come back in around term 3, and we take a bit further from what we did in workshop 1, discuss how everything's going, and we start to introduce problem solving. So once students have some of those basic skills, develop some skills and confidence, we start bringing in problem solving so that they can transfer their learning. And then we come back at the end of the year in term 4 and talk about end of year processes, annual reports for your school, and effect sizes and understanding and interpreting results from the QuickSmart program so you can understand and see the impact you've had with it. So the professional workshops are all included. We also provide the kit and the physical resources for the program. So that involves a full resource kit with all the games, all the flashcards, and all those resources that you need for lessons. All those resources are also available digitally. So you've got access to our QuickSmart portal. So you can, access all the games and flashcards and all these sort of resources in a digital format as well. It also includes that online access to that computer assessment part in your lessons. We also provide some additional physical resources such as some user guides, which again are available in digital format on the portal. We provide a microphone, some sample student folders, etc. So we provide all the resources to really get the program started at your school. What you guys will need to provide are the staff to be the instructors. So you obviously need to resource it such that you've got instructors to work with your students. You'll need a space to conduct lessons. Now, ideally, this is dedicated to the QuickSmart program, but if you don't have that sort of luxury and you're quite tight for space, it could be some sort of shared space. And I've certainly seen everything being done out there in schools to support students. You'll need to organise your resources. So have things like pens and pencils and highlighters and erasers, and have your kits and things in that space to use. You'll also need access to a computer to run that computer component. That doesn't have to be a specific dedicated computer. It can just be the instructor's laptop because it is an online program, so you can just log in and access it via the web. You will need a microphone for that component as well. And you will need to do some printing or photocopying to have each student have their own individual folder as part of the program. And we do supply a sample student folder to demonstrate what should be in that particular folder. Something to consider is what students do get put onto the QuickSmart program. So obviously we're talking about students who are underperforming in the area of mathematics and numeracy. You can use basically any of the data you've got available to you to assist with which students you should put on the program. So things like NAPLAN data, obviously, if you've got that available to you, PAT Maths, so ACE's Progressive Achievement Test in Mathematics, or check-in, or any of the other number of different tests that you might do within your school. There's also the diagnostic assessment, which is a simmer program, which is designed as a screening tool. So you can give it to large numbers of students at a time to give you information to assist you with working out which students would benefit from the QuickSmart program. And that one is a separate license to the numeracy program. You can obviously use the students' school results and their attendance data. As a byproduct of an intervention program, quite often attendance can increase for students, so they come to school more regularly when they're on a program like this. But you need to consider at your school whether you want to consider attendance as a prerequisite for selection, because you don't want your time and resources to be wasted such that you're sitting there and for students that are regularly not attending school, because another student might be able to use the program and use that time. And of course, classroom teacher observations. They see students regularly and can give you great insight on which students you think would be beneficial. So as I mentioned, ones that have experiencing persistent difficulties in the area of numeracy or basic mathematics. Ideally, they've displayed good attitude to learning in small groups, because you will be working with pairs of students at a time. And as I said, you might want to consider how often they attend school as to whether you want them to be on the program. I've got here that they've got average academic potential without major attention difficulties, problem behaviours, or complex learning profile. So the QuickSmart program is not designed for any particular learning disorder or disability. So students that might have more complex learning profiles, you might need to consider whether they're suitable for the program. For instance, if they have an intellectual disability, if they have a processing disorder, they might need a very adapted program or another program that might be more specific to their particular learning needs. But ultimately, it's your choice at your school as to which students go onto the program. So if you're starting the program for the first time, as I said, you get your professional development, so that's 6 days for up to 5 staff members to be trained regarding the program, so they can be instructors in the program, as well as, coordinators and principals or staff execs from your school. All the physical resources, so we provide the kit, we provide all those physical resources and the games packs, etc. You get access to our portal, and our online portal has access to that computer component as well as all those digital resources I mentioned. So you get 3 years access to that. So of course you keep your kits forever, and after the 3 years, you just need to subscribe a much smaller amount. I think it's about $800 a year for access to that online component. So of course you get online support from us. So you've got access to us to help you anytime during your journey with the QuickSmart program as well. There are additional discounts based on your school. For example, low enrollment schools. If your school already has QuickSmart Literacy, there's then a discount for the numeracy program. Or if you've got a staff member who's already done the training, there's a discount for that. So there's a variety of different discounts based on your school's particular situation.